Okay. Y'all see my screen? Somebody? Should be able to.
Yes, sir. I see WA though.
No, that's not David's screen.
That's not your screen no more.
All right, let me jump back on there. All right, good God. Okay. All right, now can y'all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. And y'all should be able to hear the audio here in a little bit. So let's just go ahead and kind of jump into this. Let me get on the right place real quick. Sorry, I was reviewing this. Okay. So, many of you might know, may not. My name is David Gary. I'm a behavioral specialist with South Plains Community Action Head Start, Early Head Start. Started back in August. So today, we're going to be talking about essentially, managing your emotional baggage, your crazy feelings, whatever you may call it. There is no doubt that, our emotions play a huge role in our daily lives. And this is whether it's at work or school, home, friends, family, it doesn't really matter. And oftentimes, though, there are times our emotions can run wild. And if left unchecked, we may find that a lot of times these emotions ruin in various aspects of our lives. So this morning, what I intend to do is provide everyone with a summary, so kind of an overview of a book that I read called Managing Emotional Mayhem, The 5 Steps to Self-Regulation. This book was written by Dr. Becky Bailey. I believe it was back in 2010 it was published. First, we'll go through a particular area that I believe is essential to work on before working on learning the what's and how-tos of self-regulation, which is called self-compassion. From there, we'll go through the book, essentially chapter by chapter. Don't freak out, it's only 5 chapters, and I've really seriously done some editing on it. My overall goal with this training is to provide you with an extra tool for your mental health toolkit. And then, of course, it's up to y'all whether you use it or not. One important thing to remember is that during this training, if you might see you need some change or a ton of change, I want you to always remember there are no overnight fixes or solutions for, things that we're essentially, going to be learning to form a habit. And just like getting in the practice of using conscious discipline or this 5 steps to self-regulation, forming a habit or breaking a habit typically takes about 27 days. So if you try this and it isn't quite meeting your expectations on, say, the 1st or 3rd or even the 23rd day, keep trying. I don't want you to look at those previous days as failures, but finding a way that didn't maybe not quite work out for you. But look at all of them as teachable moments. So while reading through Dr. Bailey's book, I kept thinking to myself, this is really useful information, and it really is. And then I thought, what if the person doing doing these steps is basically their own worst enemy? And that's where I thought, okay, that's where self-compassion could come in. So you're probably asking, what is self-compassion? Well, just a little background. Self-compassion was pioneered by Dr. Kristin Neff with some simple concepts that a lot of people, uh, me for the longest time, didn't even think about. The main idea involves basically treating ourselves as though we would our best friend or a good friend. Uh, we often give our friends wonderful advice, and having self-compassion allows us to start taking essentially our own advice. Uh, so think about this. Who is your own worst critic? And I'm sure everybody, if you're honest, you already know the answer to this. And oftentimes, we are harder on ourselves, more so than anyone else. And a lot of times, this results in an abundance of self-negative talk. So, how do we do anything with self-compassion? It's imperative to first realize it's okay to be nice to ourselves. It's not being selfish, not being rude. We treat ourselves in the same way we would a good friend. Uh, basically, you couldn't say it to your best friend. Well, then why would you say it to yourself? Practice mindfulness, which means being aware of the world around us, our connectedness with others, and our own bodies. Ways to, just some examples as to ways to kind of try to do this. One is take time for yourself to recharge. And that could be 10 minutes at the beginning, ending of your day. Say 10 minutes at the end of your lunch, just kind of sitting there alone in a quiet place, thinking about absolutely nothing. It could also be a quick 10-minute meditation where you focus on, say, deep breathing. It could also be a walk. I mean, it's just to name a few. Those are just examples. Uh, so this is kind of a recharge. And like a battery, we run down, and this is your time, like I said, to recharge. If we are not charged and ready to go, then really how effective will we be at accomplishing our daily tasks or helping the people that we typically try to help during the day? I have a couple of videos to show that explain self-compassion in a little more detail. Um, y'all should be able to hear this. Due to time constraints, about halfway through this video, I will kind of skip through and we'll go from there, okay? So here we go. If y'all cannot hear this, then please chime in and let me know, but you should be able to.
Health benefits of self-compassion. I guess you could say that I am a self-compassion evangelist. I love spreading the good word about self-compassion. I've devoted the last 10 years of my research career to studying the mental health benefits of self-compassion, and more recently I've been working on developing interventions to help people learn to be more compassionate to themselves in their lives. And the reason I'm so passionate about self-compassion is because I've really seen its power in my own life. I first learned about self-compassion in 1997 when I was finishing up my PhD at UC Berkeley, and I was going through a really hard time. I had just gotten out of a very messy divorce, was feeling a lot of shame and self-judgment. I was feeling a lot of stress. Would I finish my PhD? And then if I did, would I get a job? So I thought it would be a good time to learn how to practice meditation. So I signed up with the local Buddhist meditation group. And the very first evening, the very first course, the woman leading the group talked about the importance of compassion, not only for others, but also for ourselves. The importance of including ourselves in the circle of compassion, of treating ourselves with the same kindness that we treat a good friend. And it was like a light bulb went off over my head at that moment. I realized, well, first I thought, what? You know, you're allowed to be nice to yourself, and this is being encouraged. But I realized it was exactly what I needed in that difficult moment in my life. So really from that day forward, I can say I intentionally tried to be more compassionate to myself, and it made a huge difference almost immediately. And then luckily I did get a job. I did 2 years of postdoctoral study with one of the country's leading self-esteem researchers. And while working with her, I started to realize that self-compassion offered a lot of benefits that self-esteem didn't. All right, so let me start by defining what I mean by self-esteem. Self-esteem is a global evaluation of self-worth, a judgment, am I a good person or am I a bad person? And for many years, psychologists really saw self-esteem as the ultimate marker of psychological health. And there's a reason for that. There's lots of research that shows if you have low self-esteem, if you hate yourself, you're going to be depressed, you're going to be anxious, you're going to have all sorts of psychological problems. If it gets really bad, you might even consider suicide. However, high self-esteem also can be problematic. The problem is not if you have it, it's how you get it. Right? So in American culture, to have high self-esteem, we have to feel special and above average. Okay? If I told any one of you your work performance, oh, it's average, or you're an average mother, or if you told me afterwards that this talk was average, I'd be crushed, right? It's not okay to be average. It's considered an insult to be average. So what's the problem with that if all of us have to be above average at the same time, right? Are the words logical impossibility springing to mind here, right? Okay, so what happens if we all have to feel above average is we start playing these little games. We start subtly finding ways to puff ourselves up and to put others down so we can feel better about ourselves in comparison. And some people actually take this to an extreme. You may or may not know, but there is an epidemic of narcissism in this culture. They've been tracking the narcissism levels of college undergraduates for the past 25 years, and they are at the highest levels ever recorded. And actually, a lot of psychologists believe this is because of the self-esteem movement in the schools, okay? And there are a lot of nasty social dynamics that can stem from needing to feel better than others to feel good about ourselves. We also have an epidemic of bullying in our culture, in our schools. Well, why do kids bully? Why do kids who are forming their sense of self feel they've got to bully others? It's partly to build their own sense of self-esteem, to feel that they are stronger, more powerful than these other kids that they're picking on. Or why are people prejudiced? Why do we feel that our religious group or our ethnic group or our political party is better than the other group? Partly in order to enhance our own self-esteem. Right? Another problem with self-esteem is that it's contingent. It's contingent on success. We only feel good about ourselves when we succeed in those domains of life that are important to us. But what happens when we fail? What happens when we don't meet our ideal standards? We feel lousy, we feel terrible about ourselves. And for women, this is especially hard because what do you think research shows around the world, the #1 domain in which women invest their self-esteem? Right? Our perception of how attractive we are. And the standards for women are so high. How can we feel above average in looks when we're looking at all these supermodels? Even the supermodels feel insecure compared to other supermodels, right? It's very interesting. If you look at this developmentally, around 3rd grade, boys and girls both think they're pretty attractive and they have fairly high levels of self-esteem. And then for boys, about the end of 6th grade, yeah, looking pretty good, feeling pretty good. End of high school, looking good, feeling good about myself. But for girls after 3rd grade, their perception of how attractive they are and therefore their self-esteem starts to take a nosedive. okay? Starts very young. So how do we get off this treadmill, this constant need to feel better than others so that we can feel good about ourselves? Well, that's where self-compassion comes in, okay? Self-compassion is not a way of judging ourselves positively. Self-compassion is a way of relating to ourselves kindly, embracing ourselves as we are, flaws and all. Okay. I actually define self-compassion in my research as having three core components. The first, you might say, is the most obvious, and that is treating ourselves with kindness versus harsh self-judgment. Treating ourselves like we treat a good friend, with encouragement, understanding, empathy, patience, gentleness. But if you stop to check in with how we treat ourselves, especially on a bad day when things aren't going so well, we are often harsher and more cruel to ourselves in the language we use. We say things to ourselves we would never say to someone we cared about. We say things to ourselves that we probably even wouldn't say to someone we didn't like very much. Okay, we are often our own worst enemy. So with self-compassion, we reverse that pattern and start treating ourselves like we treat our good friends. The second component of self-compassion is common humanity. All right, where self-esteem asks, how am I different than others? Self-compassion says, well, how am I the same as others? And one of the ways we are the same as others, what does it mean to be human? To be human means to be imperfect. All of us, everyone in the entire globe, we are imperfect as people and our lives are imperfect. That is the shared human experience. Often what happens, though, irrationally, when we notice something about ourselves, we haven't reached our goal, or we're struggling in life, we feel as if something has gone wrong here. This is abnormal. This shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't be, failing to reach my goals. And it's that feeling of abnormality, of separation from others, that is so psychologically damaging. We make it so much worse by feeling we're isolated in our suffering and our imperfection, when in fact that's precisely what connects us to other people. And then the third component of self-compassion is mindfulness. Mindfulness means being with what is in the present moment. And we need to be able to turn toward, acknowledge, validate, and accept the fact that we are suffering in order to give ourselves compassion. Now, actually, oftentimes we aren't aware of our own suffering, especially when that suffering comes from our own harsh self-criticism. We get so lost in the role of self-critic, so identified with it, so identified with the part of ourselves at the back is straight saying, you are wrong, you should have done better, that we don't even notice the incredible pain we're causing ourselves. And if we don't notice what we're doing to ourselves with our harsh self-criticism, we can't give ourselves the compassion we need. So you might be asking, why do we do it? Self-criticism, we know it's painful. Why do we do it? What we've actually found in research, there's a lot of reasons we're self-critical, but the number one reason is that we believe we need our self-criticism to motivate ourselves. That if we are too kind to ourselves, we will be self-indulgent and lazy. Okay? So the question is it true? Is it true? Actually, the research shows just the opposite. Self-criticism undermines our motivation, and here's why. When we criticize ourselves, we are tapping into our body's threat defense system, the reptilian brain. Okay, this system evolved so that if there was a threat to our physical person, we would release adrenaline and cortisol and prepare for the fight or flight response. Now, the system evolved for threats to our actual bodily self, but in modern times, typically the threat is not to our actual selves, but to our self-concept. So when we think a thought about ourselves that we don't like, that's some imperfection, we feel threatened. And so we attack the problem, meaning we attack ourselves. And with self-criticism, it's a double whammy because we are both the attacker and the attacked. So self-criticism releases a lot of cortisol. If you are a constant self-critic, you will have constantly high levels of stress, and eventually the body, to protect itself, will shut itself down and become depressed in order to deal with all the stress. And as we know, depression is not exactly the best motivational mind state. All right? Luckily, we aren't just reptiles. We're all do our best. And it's actually very easy to see when we think about how to best motivate our children. So let's say there is a father whose son comes home from high school with a failing math grade. The father has two different ways to try to motivate his child. The first is with harsh criticism. The son comes in, shows the father the math grade, and the father says, "I'm ashamed of you. What a loser. You'll never amount to anything." Doesn't that make you cringe? And yet, isn't that often precisely the type of language we use with ourselves? And what's going to happen to that son? Will he try harder? Well, yes, he will for the short term, but eventually he's going to lose faith in himself. He's going to become depressed, and he will become afraid of failure and probably give up math because the consequences of failing again are just too dire. But what if the father takes a compassionate approach? The son shows him the failing math grade, and the father says, "Ooh, ouch. Wow, you must be hurting. I'm sorry. Hey, give me a hug. I still love you. It happens to everyone. But I know you want to get your math grades up because you want to go to college." Here's what compassion says. What can I do to help? How can I support you? And the more encouraging, loving, compassionate the father is, the better place emotionally the son will be in to do his best. And luckily, research strongly supports everything I've been saying. The last few years especially have seen a sharp uptick in the number of research studies conducted on self-compassion. And the bottom line is unequivocally, self-compassion is very strongly related to mental well-being. It's strongly related to less depression, less anxiety, less stress, less perfectionism. It's equally strongly related to positive states like happiness, like life satisfaction. It's linked to greater motivation, taking greater self-responsibility, making healthier lifestyle choices. It's also linked to having more sense of connectedness with others, better interpersonal relationships. We've also done some research comparing directly self-esteem and self-compassion. And what we find, what you can say, is that self-compassion offers the benefits of self-esteem without the pitfalls. So it's associated with strong mental health, but it's not associated with narcissism or constant social comparison or ego defensive aggression. It also provides a much more stable sense of self-worth than self-esteem does, because it's there for you precisely when you fail. Just when self-esteem deserts you, self-compassion steps in and gives you a sense of being valuable, not because you've reached some standard or you've judged yourself positively, but because you are a human being worthy of love in that moment. And again, this is something
Okay. Just real quick, just want to make sure everybody can still see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
So,
sorry about that. I guess somebody came in late and knocked it off. Here we go. To it.
I can't see or hear anything.
Is that the same for everybody else?
no, I can
Yes.
see your screen that says that you need to join.
All right.
There you go.
All right, let's get back in there. I guess there were some people joining, and that kind of knocked us off.
Okay.
Let's see if it'll let us jump right back in.
So, as you may know, one issue with autistic children, especially when they're young, is they can throw very terrible tantrums. So, imagine being on a plane to England. This is a true story. Rowan was 4 years old. I don't know what set him off, but he throws a doozy of a tantrum, right? Flailing, screaming. Everyone on that plane looking at us like they wish we were dead. You know, he's 4 years old, he looks normal. People are thinking, what's wrong with this kid? Why is he acting this way? And what's wrong with this mother? Why can't she control her child? Okay, lots of fear. What do I do? What do I do? Jumping out the window sadly wasn't an option. So, okay, I know, I'll take him to the bathroom. I can try to comfort him there. Maybe it'll muffle the screams. So I'm kind of taking this 4-year-old flailing child to the bathroom, which was, of course, occupied, right? So imagine being in that little space outside the bathroom door with this, tantruming child. And I knew in that moment the only refuge I had was self-compassion. So I put my hands over my heart and I tried to comfort him, but I was mainly focusing on myself. This is so hard right now, darling. I'm so sorry you're going through this, but I'm here for you. And you know what? It got me through. And by allowing myself to be open-hearted toward myself, I could remain open-hearted to Rowan. People sometimes think self-compassion is self-indulgent or selfish. It's not, because the more we are able to keep our hearts open to ourselves, the more we have available to give to others. So I would like to invite you to try to be more compassionate to yourself, especially as women. You know how to do it. You know how to be a good friend. You know what to say to comfort someone when they're in need. You just have to remember to be a good friend to yourself. It's easier than you think, and it really could change your life. And that's why I think self-compassion is an idea worth spreading. Thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to introduce that little concept in because I think a lot of times, when we try to do different things uh, for our self-improvement and everything, we still have that major critic in our head. Even when we're trying to do some sort of self-improvement and it doesn't work, we still have that voice like, you're such an idiot. What'd you do now? That's why I think that introducing the concept of self-compassion is key to learning the whole 5 steps of self-regulation, how to use conscious discipline in your work and your life, and really how to have any other sort of self-improvement actually work. So let's kind of jump into the self-regulation part of this talk. Now, many of us, if not really all of us, before being able to attempt any of these steps, often typically run within a sort of a self-sabotage cycle. Many times, this cycle begins typically early on in our life. It can also, according to research, be traced back to how, say, our parents disciplined us and raised us. And it's based on, their own experiences. And I'd say pretty much for the most part, they did the best they knew how. There are various ways within, this first cycle here. We sabotage ourselves. Many times through blaming others, for our own shortcomings. We often insist that things go our way. You know, the whole my way or the highway kind of attitude. We may try to cope by becoming addicted to various things, and that can be eating, overeating. You can, end up working out a whole bunch, drinking, alcohol, smoking. You can be addicted to people, and so forth. I mean, it's a long list. We may also attempt to justify our sabotaging thoughts and actions and behaviors. Eventually, we may feel locked into the cycle, not really seeing a way out. In short, enough of this self sabotaging cycle will form habits, often unconsciously, which eventually become our way to regulate our emotional state. Now, however, there's good news. You look over to your lower right hand corner. This cycle, the self sabotaging cycle, can be broken. And then we have the self regulation success cycle. Research in neuroscience has come really a long way and has shown it possible to rewire our brains, improve relationships, and improved possibility of success based on healthy relationships with our emotions. Uh, Basically, I'd say call it an improved emotional intelligence. So we have to learn to control our emotional upset. Uh, Most people have this idea others must change in order for us to be happy. And that really denotes us attempting to control others and connectedness with others. So the big question, how aware of our emotions are we really? How aware of your emotions are you really? And thinking about it, I figure my best guess is that many of us have the emotional development of about, I don't know, a toddler. And I think of this because of past arguments I've had with other people. Once we increase our emotional intelligence is when we can begin, to help coaching children and others. We'll be able to realize we're triggered, such as getting angry. We can then learn to calm, such as deep breathings, allowing us to feel angry instead of being angry, saying, instead of being, I am angry, it's, I feel angry. And at that point, it allows us to choose, reframe, and not isolate others or ourselves. It eventually will lead to helping to solve problems. Really? Okay. Most traditional discipline models teach children, say, one or a few of the following things. They're responsible for, number one, they're responsible for feeling others, feelings of others, such statements as, you're driving me nuts, or you're keeping the whole class from learning. Number two, with traditional, they are told what they should be feeling. Teacher tells a student, you should be ashamed of yourself. Mom's like, you should feel bad. Number three, they are told feelings are dangerous and can and will hurt you, such as a mom getting upset and saying, your dad is mad. You just wait till he gets home. I've heard that a lot when I was growing up. These beliefs isolate children from exploring their own internal emotional awareness. And this can lead to self doubt, affecting many aspects later on in life. Now, on the other hand, conscious discipline totes two cornerstone beliefs that are really the basis for these 5 steps that we're going to be talking about.
Good morning, South Plains Community Action Head Start.
Yes, this is Rena from Dr. Dalton's office.
Uh-huh.
We didn't know we were just trying to double check.
Olivia, we can hear you.
Can you turn off your mic?
Is the child available?
Okay, let me transfer you to the nurse.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess they're done with their call. All right, so the two cornerstones. Number one, what you offer to others, you strengthen in yourself. This is really true. And, because I read the book we're going over, so I got some knowledge. Great. Awesome. I decided to do a training over it. So that's what I'm offering y'all. Now, because of this training, I've really had to strengthen my knowledge of conscious discipline and self-regulation. Not saying I'm an expert, but by offering this to everyone, I have been able to strengthen my knowledge base and understanding of conscious discipline and self-regulation. So, number one, what you offer to others, you strengthen in yourself is absolutely true. Number two, whoever you believe to be in charge of your feelings, you have placed in charge of you. Basically, by attempting to have others responsible for our feelings, we're saying to that person, my upset is your fault, and you have to change for me to have happiness and peace. And short and sweet, no one is responsible for our happiness or our peace except us. Now, I believe one of our goals in Head Start and Early Head Start is to coach effectively children how to manage their emotions themselves. They do so by realizing how to be aware of emotions, how to regulate them, and then how to move on to the best steps. Self-regulation, okay, it's not control of emotions or lack of control. It is an integrative process that allows our unconscious feelings to become conscious. Many times emotions are there to make us aware of various needs to survive and maintain relationships. According to Dr. Bailey in her book, maintaining effective self-regulation is the ability to endure various sensations of stressful situations that persist due to unmet needs. Now, when we understand this, it allows our feelings to become sort of a bridge between the need and the resolution. All right, so we're going to move on, and what I'd like is for you to look at this list. We've kind of asked this before, main one is, how well do you actually manage your emotions? A lot of us, not the greatest most times. But the most important question is the one at the bottom. How willing are you to improve on your current emotional management skills? That's the important thing. If you're willing to give it a shot, if you're willing to try to make that change, then you're already a few different steps ahead. So this list is just a few statements that, if we are honest with ourselves, can likely check off at least one or two. I know for me, I tend to overthink and analyze things, which was great when I worked in the mental health field and had clients. However, doing so in your personal life, it creates a little bit of complications of their own. If you look at this list and can kind of relate, then maybe there's some need for, say, an emotional tune-up, likely due to adaptations that were made years ago when much younger, which is typically done to ensure survival, and or it can be due to traumatic situations within past years. And this doesn't necessarily have to be as a child. Uh, when I first got out of the military, uh, there were no programs or anything like that. And due to having combat is when I figured out, oh, I have PTSD. Okay, that's what that is. Um, so some of these traumatic situations, they don't necessarily have to be when you were younger or when, really young or a child. This emotional relationship I've been talking about typically begins a very early age, and research has shown that it can last a lifetime. I can remember being on trips with uh, my dad, and he's yelling through the car, "If you make me stop this car, I'm going to whoop everyone." Okay, my first thought uh, was I didn't do anything. Sometimes I did. And my next was, oh God, everyone shut up. We're going to die. Not literally, of course. Like I said previously, our parents did the very best they could at what was passed down to them. So not everything can just be put off on our parents as it relates to our current emotional intelligence. And I've said before to different people, medical science is not an exact science, and thus they often make changes and updates. So it begs the question, why can't we do the same with parenting and or teaching? Um, Dr. Bailey calls our two layers of emotions our primary and our secondary, where our primary are really non-complicated natural responses necessary for basic human functioning. Examples could be the excitement that overcomes us when we see our best friend we haven't seen in months, maybe even years, or when we cry due to the death of a loved one or a pet or something else. These are instinctual emotions. Secondary are so named since they're not entirely related to survival responses to certain situations. These emotions were developed and adapted really due to what we've seen as needed to have early in life for survival purposes, a lot of times within our own family of origin. These adaptations we believed and embraced as truth, not necessarily true, but that's how we saw it. This secondary system of emotions can deliver, for example, by telling children how to feel. An example would be, you should be ashamed of yourself, or she is gone, so put it together. Right here, you've got your relational, our primary emotions, secondary. Like I said, the primary, that is instinctual. That's what we need. Secondary, that's what we filled in based on our experiences early on in life. Okay. So I want to talk about four emotionally unhealthy teaching and parenting styles. Pretty much everybody's probably guilty of this. If you have kids, likely you are. If you are a teacher and have been for a while, probably so. The first one, we've got ignoring, dismissing, punishing, and fixing and saving. And those are the four styles. The first one, ignoring. Example would be when a child is crying due to, say, a good friend moving and tells his mom. Uh, Mom tells him, uh, "Are you done?" She say, like the mom says, "Are you done with chores?" Well, hurry up. We got to get going. I'm gonna be late for work. Now, if this happens enough ignoring, eventually the child will realize, or at least they will think they're not important, and quite possibly stop confiding in mom or that parent. The next one, dismissing. With this example scenario, it's going to be the same as the first one. Instead, mom's going to say, "Seriously? Stop this. That's crazy. With technology, you still have friends and see each other." Our punishing, again, we still got the same scenario. Kid's upset, friend's gone, comes to mom. Mom says, "You were such a drama queen and annoying. Shut up, or I'll give you a reason to cry." Now, this attitude is typically a result of uh, an antagonistic kind of relationship with our own emotions, which often spills over out onto, really everybody else. Now, the fixing and saving, once again, we got the same scenario. Kid says the same thing, but instead, this time, mom says, "Oh my God, baby, I'll make it. I'll make it better. You can talk to your friends. I'll talk to your friend's mom, and you'll be able to see each other, you know, as much as you want. Why don't we go get some ice cream?" So, mom actually fixed nothing, but did manage to make promises she had no idea how to keep. And what happens when she can't keep those promises? Also, mom in no way taught her child how to recognize effectively and address emotions. She really just covered it up. Now, likely all of us are guilty of these kind of styles of parenting and or teaching. I know I am. Uh, but we must be careful as we are quite literally setting up those children for future success or problems, whether it be at home or at school. All right. I am going to, because it's been almost about an hour. We are in the last part of this, and the last two, the adult journey and the child journey, are what's going to really take the longest. I'm going to do a 5-minute break. So I have 10:52. So if everybody will come back at 10:57, we'll restart again and keep going on through, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Hopefully, this has been okay. I know I've been talking really fast. Uh, Sorry. I will, at the end, hopefully we'll have time. And if there's any questions, I'll try to answer what I can. If I can't, then, hopefully there'll be somebody on here that can. So everybody take a break for 5 minutes and we'll come back at 10:57. All right, we're back. So I want to re-verify that everybody can see my screen. Somebody? Anybody?
I see your screen.
All right,
Yes,
awesome.
sir.
Y'all are wonderful. Okay. So we're on the last little bit of this. And that is, we've got the adult journey, then we've got the child's journey. Just like the adult and the child both have 5 different steps. And so we're going to touch each one of them. And you'll notice, if you probably haven't already, a lot of this training on self-regulation is focused on us. It's focused on you. Now, the reason that is for the same reason that the whole general conscious discipline focuses more on us, more on you. Because if we can't do it on ourselves, how are you honestly going to do this with a screaming 3-year-old? Okay? That's kind of the general concept. So, like I said, we finally come to the point of the 5 steps of self-regulation. This one's for adult. And, then we'll walk through the 5 steps concerning children, like I said. So our 5 steps for adults and even children is the I am, I calm, I feel, I choose, and I solve steps. So I have some activities. Don't really know if we have time for them right now, but if you want, I can send these to everybody, and then you can do them. The important thing is, like with this activity right here and all the other activities, be honest with yourself. This is only going to benefit you. Okay? And like the activity is, it's talking about your triggers, which we'll briefly talk about. Now, in step 1, the whole I am, being able to realize that something has triggered an emotion is really what this is talking about. Initially, when an emotion has triggered, we are then really biochemically can be taken over, which is how we become, such as when we say I am angry. Um, so briefly, step 2, the I calm. This is where we take some deep breaths, so we can relax and allow our emotions to naturally move toward consciousness. I'm going to briefly give you a summary of each one, and then we'll get into more in depth. Step 3, I feel, is learning to ID and name our emotions, which allows the surface to regulate. Number 4, I choose. And that one, to summarize, we learn to accept our feelings and become more comfortable in current climate versus what we think it should be. And then step 5, that I solve, is awareness is the way to regulation. The entire process, what it does is it teaches us to a new way to handle or perceive the original triggers. Now, like I said, we can do this activity later if we have time. If not, I'll send it to you. It's got a few different categories, and you can go through those.
David, can we go through one?
Yeah, well, we'll pause here real quick. And what I want you to do is y'all pick one. Don't try to do them all. You might do, say, like the anger and frustration triggers first. And the important thing is be honest with yourself. Whichever one you choose, check off what, really applies to you. I'll give y'all a minute to look at that and kind of figure it out. So I know, when I was going through preparing this training and everything, I know for me personally, I can pretty much check off a couple in each one of these. Um, so on this activity, in the first category, say of like anger and frustration, I'm sure somebody's uh, checked something. Say mine were the first and last boxes under the anger and frustration. I just want everybody to think about what they put. Like I said, this activity is for you only. It's not for anybody else. So the important thing is to be honest with yourselves. And it's primarily geared towards having you take a break, step back, and look and reflect on what begins to trigger emotions within you. This is the key concept to the I am step. Without our ability to reflect and become aware of our emotional triggers, uh, you wouldn't really be able to truly go through anything else within self regulation. It stops right there. So, this is a very important step. This is your foundation to be able to do anything else in self regulation. So, in the I am phase, say, I am angry, I am mad, I am whatever. Uh, so, initially, when we get triggered, basically we get emotionally, I guess you could say, hijacked, um, which gears us up to react on these emotions. Not really typically in a helpful or rational manner. Uh, Often we end up hurting others. During this time, our own inner voice compounds this negativity with phrases like, I'm mad, I'm pissed, I'm so angry, almost as though we have no control and have kind of become that emotion. Now, at this point, really, the best we can hope for is to become conscious of and ID our triggers. It's imperative to acknowledge our triggers, or we run the risk of being perceptually hijacked continuously. This will result in treating others and children the ways we're we've sworn that we'd never do. Like you'd be like, let's say, I will never do that. I will never say that to my child or one of these kids that I'm teaching. Uh, I bet you have. When we look at triggers, we typically see two types. Dr. Bailey mentions a universal and an individual. Now, universal are those triggers related to survival. Individual triggers are created based on our secondary emotional system. Being individual also means no one's persons are exactly the same. These two type of triggers create a personalized emotional alert database. Yeah, kind of like a CD. Uh, so this is why we stop and reflect on various things. and various times throughout our lives, uh, throughout our week, our day, hour, whichever is needed at the time. So, step 2 in the self-regulation for adults is I calm. Now, this step essentially allows us to notice and become aware of our emotions. In the I am phase, where we have instantly emotionally hijacked, we're basically drowning and sinking. Now, really, the only way to stop this is to insert a break, a pause, if you will, before the impulse to act turns actually into actions. So breathe. This is where we have that pause time. In conscious discipline, uh, in our classes, we teach children how to what's called STAR. Smile, take a deep breath, and relax, which is a simple calming technique, and it does work. Which the purpose is to focus on breathing. And what this does is it offers a brief distraction. So there is time to turn from the whole fight or flight atmosphere to experiencing the emotion instead of becoming that emotion. Doing so allows us to become the mindful observer and noticing instead of judging, thereby being able to let go of judgment, whether it be inner or outwardly. Judgment, whether it's good or bad, tends to block our natural flow of emotions from, going from unconscious to conscious. Kind of in the picture there, we got judgment there. It's blocking our emotions from coming up to the surface and for us to be able to continue the rest of the way through this process. So I got another a quick activity, kind of better help us notice our feelings. Now, what this is basically thinking of, it says an anger story in your head. So think back about, let's say, angry, a time that you were angry, a time that somebody in your life was angry, or it could be a time that was sad or happy or scared. Um, and what I want you to do is to, you know, since I don't have these printed out for y'all, you would take the little figure beside and you would go through each one of those boxes. So if I'm angry and I'm thinking back about, I don't know, say a time a friend wronged me, when it says my face goes like this, I think about in my head, what did I look like when I was mad or whatever, and you kind of jot it down. And what this does is this helps us, be able to get a better understanding uh, of what we're trying to do with the kids, what we're trying to do when we have those feeling buddies with them, because that's kind of the outline that you've got in front of you. Uh, like I said, now if you want to do all these that are up, it's up to you. And I can, like I said, I can send all these different activities out. I have no problem doing that. I've already got them scanned on my computer. But this is just kind of another way for us to, think about this. All right, so our step 3 in our adult journey to self-regulation is the whole I feel. And it essentially empowers us to name our feelings. Emotions are basically they're energetic physiological constructs consisting of thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. Uh, Feelings must be pulled out of this conglomerate of mess that we have. And you might ask how? Well, we must be able to let go and name primary feelings represented. This separates us from the emotion. So instead of I am angry, we shift to the whole. That's where we get into the I feel angry. Now, I'll be honest, not naming is not as easy as it sounds. This often is interrupted by uh, doing one of the four following things. You can have, say, like four different types of blocks. You got, uh, you can be blocked by burying feelings, by believing the story. So you think back about a time where somebody made you feel bad and you actually believe that. That can be a block. Confusing just a general thought with a feeling, or I feel upset versus I feel fine, which are a little bit different from each other. And we're back to judgment, using the language of judgment. This can be a serious block, as we saw earlier. All right, so we'll step 4, the I choose step. This step is put in place to really empower us to befriend or embrace, if you will, basically, you know, not fearing our feelings. So it's giving us a little bit better control of our feelings. So by doing so, it empowers us to act consciously within the realm of choice. Uh, this process gives us the opportunity to choose what action we take. So instead of flying off the handle like, sometimes I do, we actually have gone through these other steps, from I am to calm to feel to now we can make a choice. It's not just a off the wall action. Many times when we become aware of a particular way we feel, we tend to push it quietly into a corner, which really is exactly what you shouldn't do. And instead, we should really not fear the feeling, even if that feeling is fear itself. When we do the exact opposite, our feelings are allowed to kind of mesh in, integrate, if you will. Uh, they integrate into our autonomic nervous system and balance the parasympathetic, kind of that pause, and the sympathetic, kind of what speeds things up. You know, our personality, our physiology, and which also integrates our lower versus our higher brainstem. So basically, in short, they allow us to adapt to what life offers instead of fight it. So befriending or embracing our feelings gives us the opportunity to make a choice to see things differently. This allows us to choose to see a problem from many different angles and various sides. So the fifth step with adults is step 5, I solve. And with this one, really what it does is it empowers us to take action on the wisdom of our feelings. So far, we have ID'd triggers, learned to calm with breathing and noticing. We've been able to, we've named stuff and embraced our feelings. Now we can use the true messages of feelings to communicate from a position of responsibility to others. Say an example would be the anger versus frustration. Uh, Delivers a message of change and essentially asks, what do you want instead of what you don't want? Say like sadness and disappointment. It really has a message of loss and asks to seek comfort, uh, help, and understanding. And consciously knowing what we seek will truly comfort us. Scared and anxious, it has a true message of threat. Whether it's real or imagined, this particular thing calls for safety. Now, with happy and calm, overall, the message that many of us strive to achieve, and that is life is good, wonderful, woohoo, fabulous. It also reminds us to be grateful, grateful for what we have, and thankful and grateful for what we don't have. Aha. We skipped a slide. So, for those of you that are wondering, we'll get back to the other one. I just wanted to throw this in real quick. Becky Bailey's book shows quite a bit of research. Her book was published in 2010. So I was curious, how much more research have they really done on this? Because there wasn't really a whole lot at first when she was doing this. Uh, these first two right here are just two out of about 20 different actual peer-reviewed scholarly research articles that I found that was based on self-regulation and conscious discipline. So, and everything points towards the legitimacy and validity of conscious discipline and self-regulation. Just kind of wanted to throw that in there for y'all. All right. Okay, so we've gone through the 5 steps for the adult journey. So now we're going to go through the 5 steps for the child's journey. This will probably go a little quicker, and it may not seem as though there may not be as much information, but because a lot of that, like I said, is building us up to be able to do it ourselves, so that it's easier to be done with children. And I'm going to tell you, with self-regulation, conscious discipline, this is not just simply something you can do at work. This can be something that you do outside of work. Conscious discipline and self-regulation, you can use this in your daily personal life. I'm saying that from experience. So, for whatever it's worth. I've seen many toddlers like this, as I'm sure some of you had, even though she looks adorable. So, the child's journey. We've discussed many aspects of what needs to be in place before we, like I said, have self-regulation. Now we move on to self-regulation within a child. We have likely all heard kids have verbal outbursts, when arguing, give me that back, he took my toy, she hit me, and here we're going to try and understand how to effectively coach children from unconscious reactions to consciously responding. When coaching children, it may be helpful to have something they can hold. And that's kind of where it comes into in the classroom with the feelings buddies. So step one in the child journey, I am. When helping children with triggers, it typically involves four, which you can see there with that chart. And really with this, we have to be very mindful of how we do it, be consistent, and be patient. That's a few different things with these four actions really have to have. Mainly consistency and patience. Our job is to get to know our children well enough to see the world from their point of view. And how well we must let go of what we believe should be or what doesn't make sense to us. So pretty much we've got to suspend some of the judgment long enough to see from the child's point of view.
Hi, Angry.
Welcome, Angry.
Welcome, Angry.
Breathe with me.
Breathe with me.
Say you're safe.
You're safe.
You're safe. It's okay for you to feel angry.
It's okay for you to feel angry.
Yeah, it is. You can handle it.
You can handle it.
You can handle it.
You can handle it.
She didn't know what to do with all that anger inside. So you would use angry quite a bit, and we would say your eyebrows are like this, your mouth is like this. Breathe with me. You're safe. And then you were able to solve the problem. It used to take a long time for you to calm down. You'd almost throw up. And not like today when you got upset in the circle, it only took a couple minutes for you to calm down, and you gagged a little, but not much, right? Because what did you learn to do? So you learned to bring angry with you if you needed angry, but not become angry, right?
It's an advertising for the feelings buddies. I hope the initial part of that video woke everybody up. So, really, children are constantly sending us messages and signals what could be helpful. So we must be calm enough and conscious enough to hear them. Every child maintains unique triggers. However, there are some that are considered more, say, universal. Some of these universal triggers are your nutritional and energy triggers, such as a child's hungry, thirsty, tired, sleepy, I don't know, got a super sugar high, uh, bloated or something like that. And they're more likely to be easily triggered. Attachment triggers. Children can become triggered if they don't have, say, a trusting, attuned relationship with adults or whoever's caring for them. This may be seen during times such as uh, nap time, eating. It can be diapering, toileting, and that doesn't exclude any other times. Punishment and trauma triggers. Children that have received, say, rough or violent punishment uh, can and likely be triggered by, say, if you simply raise your hand next to the child. You don't mean anything about it, but it just happens because of that kid's experiences. Aggression and intrusion triggers. Really, victims of aggressive behaviors often become triggered. This occurs whether the aggression is physical, verbal, or even social. Unpredictability triggers. Children need, say, predictable and consistent environments to obtain optimal development of their arousal system. If a pattern is detected, then hey, good. We typically relax, and the exact opposite is true when no pattern is present. Your approval and validation triggers. Statements such as, I like the way Ryan is sitting, really exemplifies a subtle manipulation of a child's natural willingness to please and is used kind of as a discipline strategy. Now, we've got, say, 6 other triggers that are listed below, uh, but I will not explain due to time constraints at this time. Uh, Knowing a child's triggers increases their success by doing, uh, say, change the environment so the child is more successful. Um, Change your response patterns to the child's behavior. Teach the child a socially acceptable way of meeting his or her needs. Help handle situations not in their control with compassion, calming strategies, and problem solving. You can assist, coach, and encourage children to go to the safe place to learn and practice self regulation. All right, so step 2, the I calm, which is the whole breathe and notice phase. Active calming techniques really are the set there to disengage the stress response. Each one of these pictures represents within conscious discipline what I've seen in our classrooms and in the training for conscious discipline, you know, are all common practices that are used to, like I said, disengage the stress response. These techniques must be gone over with children when they're calm. And the purpose of that is so when a child becomes upset, they know what to do and or can be coached through that process. So downloading Calm. These emotions pretty much can be contagious, which can be a good or it can be a bad thing. And if you've ever walked into work and for some reason everyone seems grumpy, Olivia's throwing staplers across the room. There are many times it likely doesn't take long for you to absorb the same attitude. Really, this is true. I've seen it happen. I've had it happen to me. This is why we must become conscious of this dynamic and maintain a calm state. By doing so, we promote a more positive atmosphere. When we do this, the children around us, I mean, they even, and coworkers are likely to download our calmness. Since our emotions are biological and produce a common set of signals, we use noticing and conscious discipline to describe to the child their body, their face, their arms, how their hands are going, thereby bringing the child's conscious awareness onto the specific emotion. So, in the example we got here, uh, we have a kid here. He's wanting music that obviously uh, not setting well with dad. Now, dad's initial reaction, it kind of feels anger in his son. And however, if you look, the dad then used active calming and mirror neurons to facilitate self-regulation. And you may have also noticed he used the concept of noticing and downloading. This concept can be used in our classes and even with each other. I'm just going to harp on that again. I want everybody to understand this stuff we're learning is not just for the classroom. You can take it outside. Step 3. We may actually make it out of here on time. The whole I feel. Like it says, naming the feeling. And when naming, we must remember to use a non-judgmental language as we are helping to form their inner voice. I can't even tell you how many times I have done something and then thought to myself, wow, way to go with that, you dumb redneck. Or some other phrase. The object is to have them develop a positive inner voice. Now it may be a little different during, say, a teachable moment or even in a safe place. So we'll kind of go over that a little bit. Say during a teachable moment, we're going to address the emotional state, one, and then behavior, the second. Now, without doing this first, without addressing the emotional state first, it's very likely the child's willingness to participate with the problem solving will very quickly dissipate. Hey, and then you get to look forward to the whole power struggles, which is wonderful. Now, within the safe place, the child is basically in the I am state, so that's when we are able to begin the whole calm. Child gets a buddy, and then the adult coaches the child. And the goal here is to teach the child and the child teach their buddy the same self-regulatory skills. Now, the goals, I guess you could say, children are going to internalize the language we use as we respond to their emotional distress, especially during teachable moments. This language ultimately becomes or can become the child's inner speech and self-regulatory system, possibly for the rest of their lives. Not likely, but it could happen. Children will use the same coaching language with the feelings buddies that we use with them, reinforcing the same inner speech. So basically, the theme is here, be careful what you say because little ears and eyes are listening and watching. Here's another activity that I didn't really include into this. Just kind of thought I'd throw it in. So this would kind of be what you would put in there. In other words, to help this situation. So I'll give you all a minute to look over that. And then we'll move over to, I believe it's the fourth step, which is I choose. All right, so we're going to go into step 4. I choose. Really is about accepting and reframing feelings, and this allows each child, and we should allow each child as much time as needed with this. Just like I said before, remember what we offer others, we strengthen in ourselves. So with teachable moments, we must have a positive intent and a willingness and understand children are doing the best they can, okay? We must, in these moments, be certain to state uh, the child's desire and the acceptable behavior in a positive form. So, for example, we have a child that says, I don't want to sit there. Okay, so the teacher very calmly and gently, okay, I see. You wanted to pick where you sat today. So, an example like that. So, the whole I choose for the safe place. Now, during this time, we want to try and give choices with visual representations, such as what you see there, the breathing bunny and the seated cobra. Pictures that they can see, that they can have examples for. Children learn well with visual representation. And, just make sure we keep the message positive. Now, our goals in this, providing, we would be providing choices to finish their self-regulatory process. I mean, it's vital for changing the internal state from upset to calm. All of these steps build on one another. Offering positive intent to children teaches them to offer the same to others. It goes back to the whole, what you offer to others, you strengthen in yourself kind of thing. Connection activities, they promote willingness to solve problems. Okay. So the last step that we have here for this is the step 5, I solve. And there's a few different ways. This is really not a very extensive step because of the fact you have spent so much time and energy with the other steps. Because one builds on one another, once you get to this point with the step 5, I solve, it just kind of does it itself almost. So this is really about solutions. In the final step, the bridge has been crossed and the child is ready to address the problem. Problem solving requires we revisit the trigger with a new perspective, skill, and willingness. Now, if we've completed the first 4 steps, we'll be guided to basically a win-win solution for everyone involved. The solution always reinforces the self-regulation steps and strengthens connections with others. Now, if we approach problems from an unregulated state, however, win-win solutions are pretty much impossible to find. And we become, pretty upset in this win-lose paradigm of power struggles and temporary fixes. So Win-win solutions generally will fall into, as you can see, one of these few following categories. We've got conflict resolution, uh, accepting current feelings, learning a new skill, visual structuring, which kind of leads to success, and establishing stronger connections. So, with conflict resolution, um, let's just say, for example, we have a couple kids. We'll call one Elizabeth. We'll call the other one Blake. Let's say they get into kind of a fight on the playground. Both tempers run high. After calming down, they both are willing to resolve their conflict by using the whole solve conflict resolution time machine map. We'll just say they use that, for example. The time machine, is basically a structure that helps adults and children uh, successfully transform aggressive acts into life lessons, and it's through respectful, assertive communication. And is even better because they are right there in front of one another when they're doing this. It provides a teachable moment for the whole class because they can watch, and is an excellent way, I think, to help siblings or even students, one another, resolve issues. So for the accepting the current feeling state, often we don't think of managing our feelings as a solution. However, it's a pretty powerful one. In situations, say like divorce or death of a dog or a loved one, uh, there's no tangible solution to that problem. These situations uh, require vigilance in managing your emotions well enough to basically function as best as is possible. Many people attending, say, workshops, would be surprised to know that I've actually uh, leave my cell phone on during presentations, which I shouldn't, and you all saw that earlier. Um, Also, uh, for years, I was responsible for care of my dad. He had some issues that were going on, led to dementia and stuff like that. I was also called in case of emergencies. Um, and I was able to kind of do this and pull through this because of being able to manage anxiety and stuff. Um, and I guess you could say I didn't realize at the time, but allowing my emotions to bubble up and realize what it was. Now with learning a new skill, uh, this is really what we're trying to do with the kids. That's why we're trying to coach them, trying to walk them through different things, uh, and that's a very big goal. Visually structuring the environment. We do different things around the classroom. Every time I've walked in a classroom, uh, it's amazing because I can see different manipulatives and different things on the wall or in centers, or they're arranged a certain way. And that's what it's talking about by visually structuring the environment. And what it is for success. And by doing everything that we've talked about and learning how to do this in ourselves, learning how to coach kids through this and help them through all this as well. What we're doing is we're establishing stronger connections. We're establishing stronger connections. Here's the thing, within ourselves and within the child. Now, I'm not necessarily saying connections between one another and becoming better friends. I'm talking about we're establishing uh, neurologically rewiring, new pathways. Now, moving forward, our feelings serve a vital role in our development. And it serves, I mean, a really big role in kids. Our feelings, they focus our attention, alerting and motivating us to take action. They are social signals that communicate and link us with others. Like I said earlier, they're a bridge between problem and solutions. They guide all our decision making, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So, with that in mind, I'm going to provide a chart. It's in the summed up part, and it sums up the 5 steps of self regulation. It's got the coaching goals, the strategies adults should provide for children in order to make the most of their feelings. Now, I can also get this chart to the supervisors of anybody that wants it. This is actually with 12 minutes to spare before noon, the end of this presentation. I could have shown you this originally in the beginning, but I, wanted to surprise you. So we've got kind of a summary here of the different steps, and it gives kind of a basic guide with coaching goals and example coaching strategies. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's a good place to start, really. Now, upon looking at that and discussing what we've discussed, I didn't know if anybody has any questions, concerns, comments. If you do, now would be the time to do it. We have a few minutes before noon.
These are great.
Do what?
Great handout. I don't know why I have.
I don't know either, but like I said, I can get, or I can send, I can get all the handouts and activities together and just send them to you, Olivia, or I can send them to site leaders and they can distribute it to everybody that wants them. However y'all want to do it. I'm willing to do it that way.
David, you can put them on the Teams, upload them under files, and people could get them off of there.
Okay. Yeah, you're exactly right. I can do that. Didn't think about that. So I'll do that. These forms right here that y'all see in front of you and the activities I'll upload to the files.
Great.
Okay, well, if nobody has any questions, then that is actually the end of this training. I was surprised I got it done with actually 10 minutes to spare. As soon as I get information on, who attended, I've got a template that I'm working on. I'll get that done up. This will be for 2 hours, and that's what'll be on there.
David, Carrie
Yes.
said if they were not on the original invite and that somebody had to forward the link to them, they may not have access to the documents. So you might want to go ahead and send them out to the site leaders.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. That's not an issue.
Okay. It was a great training, a lot of great information. Thank you, David.
Well, I tried and I appreciate it.
Y'all have a great afternoon.
Thank you, David.
Not a problem. I appreciate y'all being here and listening in. All right,
Bye.
bye. Recording. So I need to stop the recording.